Welcome everyone, I'm Lynn Woodland. I'm the creator of the Miracles course, and I'm also the author of the book Making Miracles, Create New Realities for Your Life and Our World. And tonight is the first session of the fall quarter of the year-long Miracles course. And we have one of these live classes nearly every week. Every once in a while, due to my travel schedule, we have to cancel, but nearly every week for enrolled students where we meet here on Wednesday nights. And tonight we've opened up for anyone who'd like to audit. Usually, as I was saying, we all have webcams on so that we can see each other. And you know, it's kind of a big, unruly group tonight, and if anybody doesn't feel so comfortable with your webcam on, you don't have to, but anyone who'd like to join us, you know, and being seen, feel free. For those of you who are new to this program, the Miracles course is really a comprehensive program of weekly spiritual exercises and personal coaching. It's all about living a miraculous life. And not just having random miraculous results, but really changing the whole fabric and quality of life. And the content of this course emphasizes applying spiritual principles to help us make big leaps into our desired life goals, and to do that with ease and joy, but also to appreciate the journey as much as the results. And as much as this course is all about manifesting our own highest happiness, it's just as much about becoming a leader, a teacher, a healer, and a catalyst for positive change. Because really, as we step into true empowerment, we become increasingly aware of our connection to all of life. And we recognize that as one person is left behind, no one can truly move forward. And as we walk our own personal path of highest good, we find that we very naturally take others with us. Without trying, we just find that our innate capacity to lead and to heal and to assist just start to emerge. And that's why this program of personal growth and coaching is also an ordination program for those folks who want that certification. And here we define ministry as our path of highest contribution. And we believe that everybody has such a path. So that's part of the coursework. It's about helping us all find what that path is. Now, another facet of the Miracles course is that it works with a circular curriculum that uses the seasons as a template for wholeness. So the content actually mirrors the themes of whatever season we're in. So the spring and summer seasons that are all about the light call us to externalize and birth things in the physical realm, while the fall and winter seasons that are more about darkness call us to internalize and release our attachment to the material world. And this whole cycle of the seasons makes just a perfect template for the whole of human experience, from birth to death to rebirth, and all things in between. So the Miracles course, it has no beginning or end, and each quarter is potentially a starting point. A lot of students, once you've completed all 4 quarters, you're welcome to stay connected to the coursework, and a lot of people choose to do that, just using it as an ongoing tool for just staying connected. And that this also means, the whole circular curriculum means that whenever you begin, you're doing the same lessons as everyone in the program. So just reviewing, in the summer quarter that we just completed, we addressed topics related to nature's season of abundant growth, and we worked with the metaphysical principles of manifestation and of prosperity. And later in the season, the lessons matched that slowing pace of summer, and we touched upon themes such as creating ease and allowing bliss. Now in fall, the Miracles Course curriculum begins with an exploration of physical health and spiritual healing. And this includes a powerful ritual for miraculous healing that we do the week of the fall equinox, because I think the equinox and solstice points just have a particular energy about them that really lends itself as perfect timing to do spiritual work. And the season also addresses topics related to death and beyond, how to flow with change, how to transcend fear, and how to let go of what we no longer need. And all of this lays the foundation for the spiritual transformation that comes in the winter season. Now there's a lot more in-depth information about the content of each season and even each month of each season on the Miracles Course website, but that just gives you a little bit of an overview. And for now I really want to move on to the focus for this week, this first week of September, which is all about embracing change. Now, September, seasonally, it's a month of great transition in many parts of the world, like the northern hemispheres, primarily what I'm talking about here. And as summer ends, the fall equinox, which occurs in the third week of the month, marks the point at which darkness exceeds light for another 6 months. And this shift really encourages a shift in attention from outer directed activity to a more inward focus. And in the growing cycle, fall is when the harvest is collected and the fruit is eaten or preserved and the seeds are extracted. All the while, that's when also that abundant greenery, all the green parts of summer start to fade away. So we keep the essence in the seed as all the unnecessary abundance starts to die away. And this is the time of year that we may want to cling to those last vestiges of summer, yet we know we just can't keep the dark and cold at bay forever. In a sense, change and letting go are forced upon us whether we're ready or not. And consequently, many of us wind up catching colds in this season as our bodies struggle to adjust to the change in temperature. And on a psychological level, even though the spring phase of experience that has such a rush of birth and new beginnings creates just as much change and stress in our lives as the fall phase of dying away, we tend to associate birth with joyous emotions, while death evokes feelings of fear and sadness and loss of control. Birth fills us with thoughts of wonderful possibilities, but really death requires true vision and faith to see that just as every birth leads to death, every death eventually leads to a new birth. So the inner work of fall invites us to look at our relationship to change, to look at our adaptability, to look at our comfort with endings and with being out of control, and the spiritual potential inherent in the 6-month descent into darkness. And the symbolic underworld it represents is that in meeting our darkest fears head on, we emerge with this very deep knowing that, in truth, there's really nothing to fear. And September, which merely hints at the darkness to come, is the perfect time to prepare for the descent into winter by shoring up our physical well-being, as this adjustment from warm to cool adds stress to our bodies. So giving some attention to our physical health now can actually really help us through the whole winter season, when people are so likely to get colds and flus and darkness-related depression. So where we're starting this week is by giving attention to the underlying purpose of illness and the tremendous insight our physical symptoms can give us if we're willing to understand as well as treat them. And now throughout the month of September, as we begin this journey into darkness, we're going to be working with a whole variety of approaches to spiritual healing, addressing both our own healing as well as cultivating our ability to channel healing energy for others. And over the next few weeks, we're going to be building toward a big healing experience at the fall equinox. And we'll do a little bit of a healing experience tonight as well. Now, illness results when we've grown out of alignment with our highest good and our highest purpose. Whether it's on the small scale of several days spent in bed with the flu or a much larger scale of struggling for years with a debilitating illness. Getting sick has this wonderful way of stopping us in our tracks, forcing us into new priorities, and redirecting our lives. Sometimes whether we want it or not. And from the bigger picture paradigm of our higher self, illness has a way of satisfying unmet needs and getting us back on track in a way that our conscious choices haven't yet. And sometimes this is just as simple as forcing a few days of rest when we're feeling overwhelmed and we need a little processing and assimilation time. Now, a more serious illness may push us to change a whole lifetime's worth of old habits. Maybe it's the first time we've ever had an opportunity to put ourselves first. Consequently, even though we may address any number of symptoms, the root of an illness won't go away until we willingly choose the new priorities that ill health has in some way forced upon us. And there's also a way that when we ignore our minor symptoms, we tend to invite louder ones till we finally listen to them. Because true healing requires coming into alignment with our highest good. And if we address symptoms without supporting this whole big picture realignment, we may not be able to sustain a state of health and well-being for long. We'll need to manifest some new event to help us continue the deeper process of change that we're ready for spiritually. Now, there are many proponents of mind-body healing that hold that we're responsible for the health or illness of our physical body only to a point, and then heredity and circumstances and environmental factors kick in. However, when we take a longer spiritual view and we let go of the whole notion that illness is bad or that we must have done something wrong in order to bring it upon us, we really can look at all illness as purposeful, both to the personality, but maybe even more so to the soul. And the ego, and by ego I'm referring to the part of us that believes we're defined by the limits of our physical body and thus highly vulnerable, the ego can't help but find illness threatening and regard it as the enemy. And this ego that tries to control its way to safety turns the idea of self-responsibility, this idea that we're somehow connected to our external circumstances. The ego can turn this idea into an exercise in overly controlled, fearful personal control, with illness being a sign that we've in some way failed. However, as we'll address more deeply in another lesson here, responsibility isn't the same thing as control. We can only control what's within the range of our conscious awareness. And illness is often a way that we bring hidden, non-integrated aspects of self up to the surface and open ourselves to new options. I think this may be one of its most important functions. So rather than seeing illness as our failure to be responsible for our health, I think it's a lot more useful to look at illness as a sign that we're ready to grow in maybe the deepest of ways. The part of us that chooses illness is the self with a capital S, the spiritual self, that part of us that sees our highest good in a way that the limited perceptions of our ego can't. And so from the perspective of spiritual reality, illness can be a huge step toward wholeness. Now, no one consciously chooses pain or illness, yet the experience of dealing with these challenges can lead us ultimately on a journey that will deliver all kinds of rewards. I've heard so many people dealing with cancer and other life-threatening diseases describe their illness as one of the greatest blessings of their lives, just because it so forced them to reshuffle priorities and pursue new paths that they wouldn't have given themselves permission to pursue otherwise, and paths that brought all kinds of fulfillment. The illness gave them permission to make choices that they wouldn't have considered otherwise. Now, while illness may signal our spiritual readiness for change, our personality may not feel the least bit ready or willing. Like I said, nobody chooses to be sick. And typically, the more we resist exploring new priorities and new lifestyles and self-awareness, the more illness forces us, often against our personal will, to submit to a life circumscribed by painful symptoms. And we may feel very victimized by these changes, or alternately empowered, depending upon whether we let the experience of illness lead us somewhere or force us to push us, kicking and screaming into our next step. Really, the more we surrender willingly to these changes, to the changes that illness brings, the less we experience pain and struggle, even when the final result of an illness is death. Because ultimately, death too is a realignment with our highest good when life becomes a stage we've outgrown. Now, I'm going to go more deeply into what all this means and help you apply it personally in just a little bit. Even when we don't consider ourselves ill, we may still have a symptom or two. We may deal with chronic allergies or a tendency toward headaches or a pain or a weakness in a particular area of the body or a susceptibility to certain kinds of illnesses. And whether we're dealing with the experience of serious illness or simply the occasional minor pesky symptom, listening to these physical manifestations of dis-ease can uncover all kinds of levels of meaning and purpose that we may never have realized were there. And our physical symptoms have a way of communicating to us in a language that's just filled with obvious metaphors. If we're willing to pay attention, they can tell us a lot about our needs, our imbalances, and our path of healing. In fact, the very metaphors we use in speaking will often mirror the physical symptoms our body manifests. And I first became aware of this way back when I was director of a Center for Attitudinal Healing in Baltimore, and this was back in the early 80s. And I worked extensively then with people dealing with all kinds of physical illnesses. And I started to notice how people's pet expressions had a way of literally describing their illness. For example, there was a woman with recurring cancerous tumors in her leg who frequently used the expression, "I can't stand it." And then there was someone with food allergies who continually said, "I can't stomach it." And then there was the woman with skin cancer who spoke of things getting under her skin. And once upon a time, when I was sharing some of these examples in a workshop, there was a woman who spoke up and said, "I've had a really difficult time just receiving from people. And I just realized that my favorite expression is, I can't take it." So, one way to start understanding the language of your own physical symptoms is to consider the metaphorical meanings of the affected body parts and functions, and see if you use any of these metaphors yourself. For example, hands are for handling things. If you have pain in your hands, you might ask yourself, are you holding on too tightly in some way? Are you trying to handle everything yourself? Do you have difficulty reaching out for love and support? Or are you having difficulty grasping something? Those are some of the examples of how we literally use in our metaphors very literal descriptions of our body parts. Now I could work with that symptom, but I won't right now. It means I need to say something. If your neck and shoulders hurt, are you perhaps shouldering more than your share of responsibility? And it's no coincidence that I choked just as I got to the part of my notes that's about the throat chakra, the neck, because that's where I tend to hold a lot of stuff. So you see, I was kind of choking on my words there. Other metaphors around that part of the body include, being stiff-necked and overly rigid in how you're seeing things. Of course, I never do that. My husband's laughing to himself. Now, if you're a woman who might have some kind of issue with your breasts, have you perhaps been suckling the world until there's nothing left for you? Women with breast cancer, are often notoriously big givers, and it can be that the illness is maybe pushing you to put yourself first. Do you feel in need of nurturing for yourself? Or do you perhaps feel in some way inadequate about yourself as a woman? If you are alternately having heart problems, we'll go with another body part, have you felt heartbroken in the recent past? Or have you closed your heart in some way to warmth and love? Have you lost your joy and your passion for living? So just play with whatever body part is symptomatic for you, and play with the metaphors that come to mind around that particular body part, and see which metaphors just have a ring of truth, have a way of somehow fitting the way you feel. Now, there's a woman once in one of my workshops who just couldn't see how there could possibly be a link between the back injury that she sustained in a car accident, and the accident wasn't even her fault. She couldn't see how that was linked to her emotional needs or any kind of emotional dynamic, until I just asked her one question. I asked her how easy or difficult was it for her to feel supported in life and to allow other people to support her. Because think about it, our spine is what provides support. And it was a big zinger for her. She admitted that receiving support had always been extremely difficult for her. And as a result of the injury, her life had changed to include a regular routine of all kinds of therapies with caring professionals multiple times a week whose sole agenda was simply to support her. So as we address the situation indicated by the metaphor, we can powerfully assist our healing. Sometimes we can even alleviate the need for other treatment. Just to give you an example from my own life, there was a time when I was feeling very burdened by the pressures of life. I was shouldering more than I could carry, so to speak, and I developed a very painful frozen shoulder condition. And I had a couple of different physical therapists say that I was going to need several months of really grueling, painful physical therapy to get back in shape, which, did not sound like much fun for me. And I decided to experiment with an alternate route. Decided I was going to give myself some time before signing up for therapy, and I dealt with my emotional condition of feeling burdened. What I did is I just cleared all kinds of projects from my agenda, and I just gave myself a very uncharacteristic several-month break from work. And during this time I played more and I worked less, and I made relaxing my top priority. And as I felt less stressed, and this happened almost instantaneously, as soon as I made a commitment to taking time off, I noticed my shoulder improving. And it improved so quickly and so much that I wound up not needing the physical therapy at all. Within 3 months it was fine. And while, there really are some amazingly literal connections that can be made between symptoms and illness, it's also important to recognize that there is no simple mind-body, one-size-fits-all cookbook explanation that can be applied to every illness. There really may be all kinds of very profound spiritual purposes to a condition that aren't readily visible, that may never be all that visible from the perspective of your personality. For example, I had a very close friend named Cheryl who was born with a crippling degenerative disease that actually took her life when she was in her early 30s. And she lived a life of high disability, really her whole life. And she was occasionally accosted by very overly zealous healers who told her that if she only had enough faith, then she could heal. And, she really took offense at this and told them so, because these individuals just assumed that simply because she lived life in a wheelchair and in an obviously different body, that she was not healed. Because Cheryl strongly believed there was a spiritual purpose to her physical disability, and she actually believed in reincarnation, and she felt certain that she had committed suicide in a previous life and had chosen her current situation to help her learn to love life no matter what. And she felt that her life lesson was not to change her physical body, but to appreciate life in spite of any pain or limitation that her body created. And by the end of her life, she unquestionably did. Now, many people are familiar with Louise Hay's classic book, You Can Heal Your Life, which has a listing of physical symptoms and their corresponding emotional dynamics. And while I really do recommend this as a great reference to have on hand, I don't suggest you start by reading somebody else's interpretation of your symptoms, because symptoms and their messages are so complex and so very personal that sometimes just reading what the expert has to say closes our mind to our own insights. And even if the correspondence is right on the money for you, if we haven't made that connection ourselves, if we don't feel the truth of it, then the information won't necessarily help us change anything. Now, in coming to that understanding of why you have a particular symptom, instead of rushing quickly to just tie it up neat and tidily in some one particular theory of what it means, it might just be enough at first to simply trust that there is meaning, and maybe many, many layers of meaning. And we're going to do an exercise now to help you get some insight into that language of your own physical symptoms. But again, do keep in mind that symptoms often speak to us on many levels at once. So don't just latch onto one explanation to the exclusion of others. Really keep listening, keep opening, keep working with this material. Now, I'm going to go through a number of questions, and you might even want to close your eyes for this. If you have some paper and pen handy, you might want to keep it nearby, because as you hear something that fits you, I suggest writing it down. Just make a note of whatever really rings true. So we're going to begin this process just by relaxing a little bit. I'm going to get comfortable in my seat and suggest that you all do that too. And just take a couple of deep, full breaths. Just watch the rhythm of your breath. You'll probably notice that just watching your breath in and of itself helps you turn your attention inward. It helps to quiet your mind. It helps your body to relax. And all this helps to still the chatter thoughts of your mind, so that higher mind, higher wisdom can shine through. And just invite your higher guidance, your higher wisdom now to lead the way here. So begin by just giving some attention to where in your body you manifest physical symptoms, especially any symptoms that are most bothersome, something that you might struggle with. Maybe it's a chronic or recurring physical condition. Maybe it's a serious illness, even a life-threatening illness. Just begin by identifying a particularly bothersome condition. And now ask yourself, what are the physical functions of this part of the body? And what metaphors come to mind related to these functions? Just play with that. Just free associate. And also look at some of your pet expressions and see if they have any physical body references. Because these expressions may tell you something about real symptoms you manifest. And just to give you a little example, I've had a tendency to manifest headaches since I was a child. And an expression I used to say frequently was, I feel like my head's going to explode. And I didn't say this when I had a headache, when I literally did feel like my head was going to explode. Instead, this was my spontaneous expression that I used in exasperation when I had too many things going on in my life, too many things on my mind, and I felt overwhelmed. So that's what I mean by looking at some of your pet expressions. If you identify any, you might want to take them out of your speech, especially if you use any expressions related to "this is killing me." You don't want to use expressions like that. So just look at some of these. You might even jot some down if you notice them. And see if they show you some insight into the emotional dynamics underlying your symptoms. And next, what we're going to look at is how this physical condition might actually be serving you. And as we've touched upon in greater depth here in other lessons, any life condition that we struggle with but we can't seem to change has some unconscious payoff keeping it in place, as I was talking about earlier, even if it's just helping you take a day off when you really need it. And physical illness very much works this way. There's always something that it's doing for you. For example, I discovered over the years that headaches have a number of payoffs for me. Among other things, a headache would slow my mind down when I felt like my head was going to explode with too many concerns on my mind. I found that when my head was full of physical pain, it's not full of overwhelming thoughts. That's an example of what I mean by a payoff. So ask yourself what your physical symptom may be helping you, allowing you, or forcing you to do or be or have that you wouldn't otherwise experience. And specifically, I'm going to go through a lot of questions here. Specifically, is this condition perhaps forcing you to let other people help you? Is this the only way you allow help? Or is it causing you to spend your time differently? And if so, what might be the gain in this way of spending your time? Now, as you hear something that fits you, just jot it down. Are you receiving attention, be it positive or negative, that you wouldn't otherwise get? And if so, how is that attention providing you with something that you need or something that you expect? Because sometimes even negative attention is serving us by preserving a familiar identity that we're not quite ready to let go of. Or it might keep people from expecting too much from us. These are just a couple of possible gains. Might illness have been the way you received love and attention when you were young? So it may be a habit that you don't even realize. Is your illness resulting in you developing new strengths and resources that you might never have gotten to without this challenge pushing you? Some of the best healers I know, for example, are people who have dealt with the challenge of their own physical illness. Is it maybe preserving a familiar identity? I mentioned that earlier. And if so, what is that identity? And what might you lose that you don't want to lose if you acted outside your own conditioning? Is there a way that this condition or this symptom is allowing you to put off doing something that's either burdensome or frightening? Is it protecting you from failing at something by preventing you from even beginning? Does it distract you and keep your attention away from things that may be too painful to look at? Does physical pain take the place of emotional pain? Does it perhaps allow you to avoid painful or frightening emotions like anger or sadness or guilt or shame? As I was saying for myself, physical pain would take the place of the pain related to fear and anxiety and other kinds of emotional experience. Might illness be a way that you implode instead of explode? Does illness or symptoms give you permission to say no, to set boundaries, or even to get angry or be selfish or to grieve? Is it your way of saying, I can't, because saying I don't want to is too uncomfortable? And how are your relationships with other people affected by your symptoms? Have they deepened as a result? Does it provide an acceptable way to be vulnerable and more open emotionally? Or does your condition create more space interpersonally, so there are fewer relationships and more privacy and more time alone? Is there a way that this condition might be protecting you from intimacy and the possible hurts that could result from getting close? Like your focus is on dealing with the illness in a way that keeps you isolated and protected from that possible hurt. So just take another deep breath and open your eyes. This whole exercise is a good one to do with a bit more review and reflection time than we're going to give it here. It's one you can really mull over and get more and more out of. So I encourage you to go back over this process and give it some more thought. The recording of this class, as I mentioned, will be available on my website in a couple of days. And you can go back and see it again if you want to go over the questions again. And for those of you who are part of the regular Miracles course, you'll be able to find the written material of this lesson online, plus a lot more information that I've shared here. But for now, just from these questions, see if you can begin to discern what you might be gaining from this physical condition and what it's doing for you. And when you start to get some feeling for that, then the next step is to ask yourself, what would you need to do to receive the gains without needing the physical condition? And the true answer to this question invariably involves some degree of stretching out of your comfort zone. For example, there was a woman I worked with once who was recovering with breast cancer, and she recognized that getting sick was one of the best things that ever happened to her, because being the daughter of missionary parents, she was really born giving to others. She'd always been taught that, and she did that, and she had this loving community of people around her who adored her and just wanted to give back to her. And for the first time in her life, as a result of the illness, she was receiving loving attention and care from other people as well as from herself. And I suggested that she make a list. Actually, at first I suggested that she invite some of her friends to be on her healing committee and get her friends to help her make a list of every single kind of way they could support her healing, from practical help to spiritual help to emotional help to everything from making a meal to going for walks to anything. And then to make copies of that and to give it to everybody on her healing committee and invite people to just keep giving to her in any way they felt moved. And that was a stretch for her, but she was willing to do it. And then the kicker for her was I said, and also ask your healing committee if they would be willing to keep giving to you even after you release the illness. And this just made her clench in fear, like, oh no, I can't do that. That just went against every learned conditioning she had in life. And she got in touch with a belief she had that she really had to be struggling with life and death in order to deserve that kind of loving attention. And she did. She finally said, okay, I'll put that in. That's where we need to go. It's that kind of step that feels so painful because it goes against all of our conditioning, not because it really is a horrible, terrible thing. It just feels terrible to us because it's so different from what feels comfortable. When you find that step, that's what's going to make a big impact on your healing. So let me see. I want to. I'm skipping over some of what I was going to share tonight because I want us to have time to have questions, and also to introduce Deb and have her do a little bit of healing with us too. But I do want to mention that I'm not suggesting to anybody here that you bypass medical supervision or that you suffer unnecessarily. You know I certainly downed my share of Excedrin tablets when I was in the throes of a migraine, which I no longer get. Hardly ever anymore, since I did a lot of my own work around them. I'm not suggesting that you bypass modern medicine. I am suggesting that we not rely solely on medicine to affect our healing, that we really do our own contribution to it. And instead of seeking the most passive release from discomfort, to really do some of our own inner work at the same time, and find maybe the difficult steps that we need to take that actually will make life so much more fulfilling. Because the woman I talked about who did make that difficult step of really learning to receive, it was uncomfortable, it was also joyful. So these uncomfortable steps wind up being very joyful, ultimately, as well as contributing to our healing. So, work with this and see if you can create an action plan of things you're willing to do that would give yourself the gains you identified without illness forcing you to do it first, whether it's taking a day off for your own mental health without having to get the flu, or changing some of your life priorities, or learning to ask for help, or, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The answers to that are really very personal and purely yours. So I do want to say one thing about anybody who might be dealing with a life-threatening illness. The one suggestion I have is replacing the question of how can I get well with the questions of why do I want to get well? What do I have to live for? Do I feel complete with my life as it stands? Because simply not wanting to die, being afraid to die, isn't a powerful healing state. It's important to really identify what it is that we are living for, what we're excited about, what we're passionate about, what there is that's left to do. And true healing occurs when we embrace our passion and purpose for living, not just our battle with illness and our fear of death. And this means really living each moment, making each moment as rich and full as we would like the rest of our life to be, and really resolving anything that feels unfinished, making the most of each moment. So that's just a little of what I wanted to say about that. For those of you who are regular students here, do check out the online material, because there is more than I was able to address here. As some of you are already aware of, these live classes follow the weekly written lessons that you can access online, more or less. I can't always get all the information into them, and sometimes what we do here is on the same theme, but we really cover some very different material and different exercises. So do work with them both together. And also, just FYI, the written materials that you have access to online, many weeks will include an audio download, so you can listen to a recorded meditation as part of your online work. So, this program is really about several faculty members, myself and Reverend Deb Taramani, whose beautiful face you can see on your screen here, as well as Reverend Sandy Boyer, who really, the three of us work together to ensure that each student is supported in whatever your personal life goals are, whether it's a healing process, or manifesting your dreams, or just loving life, or really becoming a minister in your own right, whether that means ordination or just becoming a person who makes more of a difference. We work with students in a very individual way, And an important layer of this course is the prayer work that that Rev Deb does, Reverend Deb Terramani, who many of us know as Rev Deb. And Rev Deb is someone I've known for many, many years, one of my oldest friends, and I've often thought of her as the most spiritual person I know. And in fact, she's the person I go to when I'm in need of spiritual counsel. And I'm just so excited that she's joined the Miracle Course in the last year or so and is now serving as soul coach and pastoral counselor to students, offering private consultations, and will now, starting this quarter, be also offering group conferences to students. And Rev Deb is a licensed minister of religious science. She's particularly known for her powerful work with spiritual mind treatment, which is what she's going to demonstrate as part of our healing work here. And she prays for people. She'll pray with us, for us, but she also is known for praying for people who she's working with. She will pray consistently until their issue is satisfactorily resolved. And she has just this incredible reputation as a miracle maker, where people come to her with a burning issue and boom, a prayer with Deb, like poof, shifts it. I had that experience myself last week, in fact. I have some really wonderful new workshops that just came to me, and right after a session with Deb. And so it's very exciting to have her work be part of this process, because she also teaches students how to work with prayer in an effective way. How to do the kind of prayer that isn't just pleading with God, like, please, God, please, those kind of prayers that we never see answered, but to pray in a way that's empowered so that we see results. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to unmute people now, and invite. We're going to do this in two ways. Woo! Might get too noisy to keep people unmuted. We'll see.
People unmute themselves if they're not.
So, folks, if you're on, whoa, that was loud. If you're on your phone, if you would, mute yourself by pressing *6, and then you can unmute yourself if you'd like to speak. What I'd like to do is invite one person who has a healing issue that you'd like to just share, and Deb will lead a prayer on your behalf. And I always think that praying together is really powerful. So by the whole group holding this prayer with you, it has a tremendous healing effect. We'll let Deb do this kind of prayer for one person, and then we'll open it up so that she'll just pray for everyone, so that we can all hold a personal healing intent. So I'm thinking, rather than opening up everybody's microphone, it did sound like that would be way too noisy because we have so many people on. If you will just type to us in your little chat screen that you would like to receive personalized prayer, and I'll unmute you for that.
Hi, Lynn, Deb. That's Owen.
Okay. So it looks like let's unmute Owen.
Okay.
Let's see. Let's find Owen in here. There are just so many of you tonight. There we go. Okay, Owen, I'm going to unmute you, and I'm going to unmute Rev Deb.
Hi there, folks.
Hi, Owen.
Hi, Owen.
You can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Would you like to share, what you'd like healing prayer around?
It's kind of funny. I was just messaging you to say that I was having a great online session with you guys. I'm loving it. It's put me into a deep meditative state. But so I wasn't necessarily looking for a healing prayer, but obviously the universe had other thoughts. So, so I don't have anything, really.
Well, if you don't have
serious.
anything burning, we'll,
There is something,
okay.
Of course. Okay.
and
Go ahead.
and it's kind of an energy that I get on my body from time to time, and it seems to be related. Whenever I get it, it seems to have a message for me to release something. It's getting my attention, and it's a very irritating kind of energy, and obviously it's serving a purpose, or I wouldn't be having it.
Mm-hmm.
So I sort of took a note when you said, but getting messages without the need for any physical symptoms.
Yeah, you might want to look at what's burning, what's...
Yeah.
Well, I won't go into this with you now. I'll let Deb, I've unmuted you, so...
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Hey, everyone. Hey, Owen.
Hey, Deb. Hi. How's it going?
It's great. Okay, so tell me what you want to experience instead of this energy that you're feeling. I'm not totally... You want to be able just to receive guidance and messages without having to have a physical symptom?
Yeah, I guess that, put in other words, that would mean going to a higher level of consciousness, I guess in some sense, so that I have greater awareness of moment to moment of whenever I have a need for releasing, a negative belief system or whatever. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's just dive in and just show them how it all works. So I'm going to do a spiritual mind treatment, which I also call affirmative prayer for Owen now. I'm going to speak in the first person because the truth of our spiritual reality is that there's only one of us. And so right here we are a bunch of individualized portions of God, but the truth of us is that we are all one and part of all that is. And so any experience that happens with one of us or to one thread of the web affects all of us. So by my speaking this prayer, I'm saying it as Owen, for Owen, and allowing that my consciousness, my knowing, to have an effect on him, not just mentally, but to have it be manifest physically. So let's just take a minute and just do that right now. So I'm going to ask everyone just to take a couple of breaths in, just follow your breath for a couple of sessions here, a couple of seconds. Just breathe in. Exhale with a noise if you can. Just let yourself calm down, and as we're breathing together, just letting it go. And so here is what I know is the truth. I accept this now as Owen. That there's only one perfect, divine, infinite, all-powerful, ever-present energy. I call that energy God, but I can call it by any name. It is the source of all things. It is a power for good, and I can utilize that power. I can direct that power to manifest what I want to experience in my life. And so right now, I claim that I receive all the guidance and all the direction I need with ease and with grace, and in ways that are both expected and unexpected, but that in ways that are really clear and positive and encouraging to me. Divine Mind inspires my mind in ways that are perfect just for me, and I know exactly what I need to know at exactly the right time I need to know it. And every idea, every belief that I have that is aware of the truth of my being is now absolutely expanded as I move more and more into this greater understanding of who I am. And that is, I am God expressing. All that the divine is now expressing as me, as my life. And so I let this truth be integrated into my consciousness at a greater depth than ever before. And I let this infinite intelligence, I let this endlessly loving heart just take over and allow me to create with ease and with perfection and with joy. I know that it is God's great, great joy to give me all the good that is mine. And so I allow myself to feel this incredible love and this endless giving. I let myself feel this ever, ever, ever greater. With every breath, I'm more aware of the love and of the givingness of spirit. And I open up my mind, I open up my heart, I open my eyes, I open my arms, I open my checkbook, I open up every facet of my life and allow it to be filled to overflowing with all the good that is mine. Any in me that has any resistance to accepting, allowing this good, is now pulled up. It is yanked out like weeds from the root. And this great fertile space is now welcoming and ready to receive all of my good. I'm so grateful for my willingness to have all the good that is mine. I'm so grateful for my willingness to release struggle, to release pain and discomfort. I'm so grateful to the power and the presence that is behind all of this and makes this happen in ways that I can't even imagine. And I don't have to know how. I let Spirit take care of all the hows. I simply know what I want to experience, and I continue to put my energy there. And I know that the energy is now being revealed and informed on the material plane. I accept this transformation right now for Owen. I accept this for myself, and I know that it's done. I release this prayer with conviction and with gratitude and with great joy, and I accept this as complete right now. Thank you, Spirit. And so it is.
And so it is.
Wow, that was great.
Yay!
Yay!
Yeah. I feel like we all
So that's
got something from that one, Deb.
No kidding.
Well, definitely, like spiritual mind treatment makes us really aware of unification. And the truth of unification is there's no private good. So any good that comes to you or anyone else is for you and everyone else. And so that's the joy of really receiving all good, is that it just multiplies and moves out further and further and further. So that's a little bit of how we work with spiritual mind treatment. And if folks want to have, any particular thing that they want to see changed or healed or created in their life, that's something we can do in their private session. And I will certainly, allow people to experiment with spiritual mind treatment to the degree that they want to.
And I'll invite you before we close to do one more prayer and include everybody, because I know we had some other folks who were saying, me, I've got a healing issue. And on one hand, we all got a healing with that. And in case anybody feels like you didn't quite get it, we'll cover you. You'll get yours. My experience of spiritual mind treatment is that it's very much like a healing with words, where words are really the energetic tool, and there is a lot of potency that comes from the practitioner, just from you honing your own intention and consciousness and words. So, just FYI, my experience in working with Deb myself is things start happening. With this kind of prayer work, things start happening. I want to open it up before we end with one more healing prayer. To anyone who has anything you'd like to share about this evening, questions. For regular students, feel free to bring questions about tonight back to next week, because we'll always take time for your questions. But also in particular, if there's anyone who's not a regular student who has questions about becoming a Miracles Course student, please speak up. You'll need to chat first. You'll need to type into the chat box so we can unmute you. But I do want to give you a chance with that, because we keep enrollment for this quarter open until the 10th of the month, and then we'll close it. You won't be able to join again until the winter quarter. The fee for the Miracles course is $425 per quarter. That includes a lot of different pieces, from the online materials to working individually and in a group with Deb, to working in a group with me. So there's a lot of different ways you can attend. You also can pay as you go. It's a little bit more that way, but not a whole lot. You can pay monthly, and that's perfectly fine too. If there is anybody who has a question about anything, either the content or the course or anything you'd like to share about your experience, just type it now. You can just type that you have a question, and we'll... Who is that?
That's Nicole. She has a question.
Where'd it go? Where'd it go?
Down.
Actually, I'm just going to unmute you, Nicole. There you go. So I just unmuted you, Nicole. What's your question?
What I wanted to know is, when you were talking about why we get ill, you were saying things like you need to look at the underlying reasons. But if you, say, looked at your own health and then took more time for yourself and rested and whatever, can it, as you know, my daughter's not well, I know you and Rev Deb are aware of that, but does that have an impact on those around one as well, affecting, looking at your own health, considering we're all one? That's really what I'm trying to understand.
Well, absolutely.
Is it just us that we help fixing, or other people as well throughout?
I think family connections are so karmic and intertwined, and I've always believed that some of the most powerful gifts we can give our children, whether they're adult children or little children, is not just a perfect life, but the example of our own healing. And my suggestion for working with the illness, the dis-ease of a loved one is to really begin by creating your own inner sense of healing, to connect with the part of you that's whole and perfect, that always has been, that still is, that always will be. And when you can really experience that, when you can feel it, then share that with the other person, where in a sense you're connecting your whole self to their whole self so that you amplify it for the two of you. And that's a very different process than focusing in on what's wrong and trying to fix it, which can amplify that. It can, amplify your stress as well. So especially when working with family connections, I suggest that as the most potent way to affect healing. Because yes, a family is so connected. You have karmic agreements that you come in with, like I'm going to have this illness because it's really going to push you to learn your lessons. We really do that with one another at some spiritual dimension.
Sorry, Sandra.
No, go ahead.
If I look at my daughter's situation, it has allowed me to meet you. It has given me benefits, if I look at that as well. So
Yeah.
It's quite interesting. It hasn't just been her situation. It's affected me as well.
Yeah, and
in a beneficial way.
And that might be some of what I was talking about in relation to the karmic agreements you come into this life with. That in some, alternate reality before we come into life, soul to soul, we say, okay, we're going to do this dance together so that I can learn this lesson and I can help you learn that lesson. So that might be something that as you acknowledge some of your lesson and learn it more quickly, that might be part of how you support your daughter in her healing lessons as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
We have a comment from Yvette. She'd
Yeah.
like to make a comment.
Okay. Yvette, you're unmuted. Let's see, you're unmuted, but I think you're self-muted, Yvette. You have to unmute yourself or type.
Okay, can you hear me
Okay,
now?
gotcha. Yeah.
Yes.
Can you hear me now? Okay,
Yes,
great.
yes.
So I just wanted to make a general comment to everybody who's out there and possibly considering taking this course. I signed up in the winter, in January, because I was recovering from a health crisis, and I've just been so blown away by the content, by the support, by the weekly experiences during these webinars, the material. It's all been such a huge part of my healing, and so I'm really grateful and just wanting to encourage anybody who's interested in healing on a spiritual as well as a body level, that this is a wonderful investment in themselves.
Thank you, Yvette. Great testimonial there. Thank you. Anyone else? Any other questions, thoughts, comments? Okay, well I know Jacqueline in particular is dealing with it sounds like a neck issue, and she says she's really gotten the lessons, she's ready to let it go. So we'll all hold Jacqueline in mind in particular, and let's everybody now just bring to mind our own personal healing intention. And Deb, why don't you give us one more prayer?
Okay.
Just for everyone.
Yes, so this is what I know for everyone who hears the sound of my voice, that God is present. Right here and now, God is present. And I know that this infinite intelligence, this endless, endless love is flowing through me, flowing through all things, all that is, informing all things, creating, maintaining, and sustaining all things, and that includes me, and that includes my life. And so I know that for everyone listening today on this call, that there is a clear and smooth pathway of healing and of expansion of consciousness. I know that everyone on this call has really opened up and viscerally feels this greater connection to spirit, to all that is. And this just outpictures, as we go through our daily lives this week, this endless knowing of unity, of belonging, of love, of perfection, and any and every health concern is now brought up to be healed. And God knows exactly what we want. And so before we even have to ask or claim it, Spirit simply says yes. And our entire blueprint, the divine blueprint for health, physical, mental, and spiritual, is now activated to everyone who hears my voice. I'm so grateful for the synergy of all of the loving energy that is here tonight. I'm so grateful for this wonderful blessing of the Miracles course, and for the ability to go deeper and to examine our lives and our souls through this template of the seasons of the Mother Earth. The intimacy and the joy and the endless transformation is so, so deeply felt and enjoyed by everyone here. And I know that the joys of autumn, all of the letting go, all of the healing, all of the gifts are now being received in grace and perfect ways. I'm so grateful to everyone here for being present and for letting themselves have this gift of love, of healing, and of the encouragement of this beloved community. And so I let this prayer go. I know that everyone is blessed, everyone is healed, and everyone leaves here tonight with a radiant healing light filling them and illumining their body and their mind and flowing out from them to all that is. How grateful I am for this incredible blessing. And I release this now, and I let it be so. And so it is.
And so it is.
Thank you.
So thank you, Deb. And thank you, everyone. I did just unmute everybody. We're kind of a big cacophony again now. I just want to say thank you all for joining in tonight. We will have a recording of this available in a few days, couple days. Sunday. And if you have any questions about tonight or about the Miracles course, just email me. Just respond to your invitation, and I'll answer your questions. Good night, everybody. Good night.
Great to see everyone.
Night.
Love you guys.
Thanks, Lynn. Thanks,
Good
Deb.
night.
Love you. Mwah. Mwah.
Wow.
Bye.
Keep me
Wow.
posted.
Nicole, it was especially nice to have you from the other side of the world. Thanks for joining
Yeah,
in.
wow.
Yeah,
Thanks
thank
for
you.
waking up.
Yeah.
See you soon, honey.
Now it's back to bed.
Back to bed.
Sweet dreams.
Bye-bye.
Good night, everyone.
Good
night.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Good night. Sleep well.